The chamber was huge. Captain Taiyang Huang had seen many impressive things in his 34 years, but nothing like this. The walls were made of crystal that seemed to glow from within. The ceiling was so high he could not see the top. Around him, thousands of aliens sat in rows that went up and up, disappearing into the distance. They came from every corner of the galaxy. Some had fur, some had scales, some were just clouds of light. All of them were watching him. Taiyang stood in the center of the room, floating in a sphere of blue light. The light held him in place so everyone could see him. He wore his military uniform, but all his medals were gone. That was the rule here. The accused wore nothing that showed their achievements. Only their crimes mattered now. His hands were steady, but his heart was not. He knew what was coming. He had known for 3 months ever since they arrested him on Talos 4. The trial had finally arrived, and with it his judgment. Below him, Ambassador Mireille Park sat at a long table. She was Earth's top diplomat, the woman who had helped humanity join the Federation 5 years ago. Now she had to defend him. Taiyang could see the worry on her face. She had told him yesterday that the odds were bad, very bad. The Federation had never seen a case like this. A deep sound filled the chamber. It was like a bell, but also like a voice. The trial was beginning. 9 judges entered from a door that appeared in the crystal wall. They moved slowly with great dignity. The center judge was the oldest. His name was High Magistrate Velthorn, and he had lived for over 600 years. His species, the Vryn, looked like tall trees made of silver metal. His face had no expression, but his eyes glowed with ancient intelligence. The other judges represented different species from across the Federation. Each one had served for decades, sometimes centuries. They had judged thousands of cases. They had seen every kind of crime. But Taiyang knew that what he did was different. It was not just a crime to them. It was incomprehensible. High Magistrate Velthorn raised one long arm. The chamber became completely silent. "We are gathered to judge Captain Taiyang Huang of Earth," Velthorn said. His voice was clear and cold. "He stands accused of the most serious violations of Federation law. Commander Thexra, present the charges." A figure stood up on the opposite side from Ambassador Park. Commander Thexra was a Kessian, a species that looked like armored lizards walking on 2 legs. His scales were dark blue, almost black. His eyes burned with anger as he looked at Taiyang. "The charges are clear," Thexra began. His voice was harsh. "Captain Huang violated Protocol 7 by deliberately targeting non-combatants. He violated the sacred armistice by acting as judge and executioner without tribunal authority. He committed crimes against sentience by causing the death of 247 beings. These crimes demand the maximum penalty. Complete neural dissolution." A wave of sound moved through the chamber. Aliens talking in hundreds of languages. Neural dissolution meant death. Not just death, but erasure. The person would cease to exist in every way. Their mind, their memories, everything would be destroyed. It was the worst punishment the Federation had, but there was more at stake than just Taiyang's life. If he was found guilty, Earth itself would be punished. Humanity might be expelled from the Federation. They would be alone in the galaxy again, surrounded by species that now saw them as dangerous criminals. Everything humanity had worked for would be lost. "Let us see the evidence," Velthorn said. The crystal walls changed. Suddenly, Taiyang was looking at Talos 4. The images were so real it was like being there again. He watched himself 3 months ago, leading his team through the wasteland. The mission had been simple at first: escort a group of refugees to safety. The war in that sector had ended, but people were still fleeing the destroyed colonies. Taiyang's team was supposed to protect them on the journey. Federation Command had assured them the route was safe. But Taiyang's instincts told him something was wrong. He had learned to trust those instincts during his years as a soldier. When they passed an old facility that should have been empty, he felt it. Danger. Something bad was happening inside. Federation Command ordered him to keep moving. Stick to the mission. Don't investigate. But Taiyang could not shake the feeling. He made a choice. He told his team to wait with the refugees. Then he took 3 soldiers and entered the facility. The images showed what they found. Cages, dozens of them. Inside were people from many different species. They were dirty, starving, afraid. Some were adults. Many were children. They had been captured by traffickers, criminals who sold people like property. Taeyang's hands had shaken as he cut through the locks. He remembered the sound one child made when he approached, a sound of pure terror that went straight to his heart. The child did not know if he was there to hurt or help. That sound would haunt Taeyang forever, but the cages were not the worst of it. In the lower levels, they found more. Children being forced to work in a weapons factory. The traffickers were making guns and selling them to rebel groups. The operation was huge, organized, and very profitable. Taeyang contacted Federation Command immediately. He reported everything. They told him to evacuate and wait for the proper authorities. The process would take time, weeks, maybe months. They had to build a case, get approval from multiple departments, coordinate with local governments. There were procedures to follow. Taeyang asked what would happen to the captives during those weeks. Command said they would be monitored. They could not be moved without proper authorization. The traffickers would be watched to make sure they did not escape. But Taeyang's team had found intelligence data in the facility's computers. The traffickers had 3 more locations like this one. They were planning to move all their captives in 5 days. If Federation Command waited for authorization, the traffickers would disappear. The evidence would vanish. The captives would be lost forever. Taeyang looked at the children in those cages. He thought about waiting weeks while proper channels were followed. He thought about those children being moved to another facility, another planet where no one would ever find them. He thought about the weapons being made and the people who would die from them, and he thought about Europa. 10 years ago, he had followed procedure. He had waited for authorization, and 37 children died while he followed the rules. He still saw their faces every night. He still remembered every name he made his decision. He gave his team a choice. They could leave, report him, save their careers, or they could stay and help him end this. All of them stayed. The images showed what happened next. 17 minutes of coordinated action. Taeyang's team moved through the facility like shadows. They freed 183 captives. They secured the weapons and all the evidence, and they killed 247 traffickers. The images did not hide anything. Some of the traffickers fought back, but many were sleeping when they died. They were unarmed. They were not given a chance to surrender. Taeyang's team executed them with cold efficiency. The chamber erupted. Aliens were shouting in their various languages. Some were angry. Some were horrified. To most of them, what they saw was barbaric. Their civilizations had evolved past such direct violence thousands of years ago. They had laws, courts, proper procedures. The idea that one soldier could decide who lived and died was unthinkable. Commander Thexra let the noise continue for a moment. Then he raised his hand for silence. "This is what humans are," he said, his voice full of disgust. "They claim to be civilized. They asked to join our federation. But look at what they do when they think they are right. They ignore our laws. They kill without trial. They act like savages who believe might makes right." He turned to face Taeyang directly. "Captain Huang, you had no authority to do what you did. You violated every principle the Federation stands for. You are guilty and everyone in this chamber knows it. The only question is whether we will let your species continue to endanger the galaxy with their primitive violence." Taeyang said nothing. His face was calm. He had known this moment would come. He had accepted it 3 months ago when he gave the order to attack. He regretted nothing except that he could not save more. Ambassador Park stood up. Her voice was steady, but Taeyang could see her hands gripping the table. "High Magistrate," she said, "we do not deny the facts. Captain Huang did violate Federation protocols, but we ask that this tribunal consider the full context before making judgment. There is more to this story than what appears on the surface." Velthorn's glowing eyes fixed on her. "What context could possibly justify this?" "The human context," Park replied. "The reasons why we see the situation differently than you do. Give me the chance to present our defense and you will understand." The High Magistrate was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well, but understand this, Ambassador. The facts are clear. The law is clear. Your captain is guilty. Nothing you say can change that. The only question is whether there are any reasons to show mercy before we pass sentence." Park bowed her head. "That is all I ask." As the first day of the trial ended, Taeyang was taken back to his cell. It was comfortable as prisons went. The Federation did not believe in punishment before judgment. But comfort did not matter. He lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about the children he had saved. 1 Hun. The second day of the trial began with Ambassador Mireille Park standing before the 9 judges. She had not slept well. The weight of what she had to do pressed down on her like a physical thing. She was not just defending one man. She was defending all of humanity. High Magistrate, honored judges, she began. Her voice was clear and strong. I do not stand here to deny what Captain Huang did. The facts are not in question. He violated Federation protocols. He took lives without tribunal authority. By the letter of your law, he is guilty. The chamber was completely silent. Everyone was listening. But I ask you to understand why he did it, Park continued. Not to excuse it. Not to say it was right according to your laws, but to understand the human mind, the human heart, and why we sometimes see the world differently than you do. Commander Thexra made a harsh sound. There is nothing to understand. Your species is violent. That is all we need to know. Is it? Park asked. She turned to face the audience. Let me tell you about Earth. Our planet is not like yours. We call it a death world. Everything there wants to kill you. The weather can freeze you or burn you. The animals hunt in packs. Diseases spread in days. For millions of years, humans had to make instant decisions just to survive. Wait too long, think too much, and you die. She activated a hologram. Images of Earth appeared, showing its harsh environment. Storms, predators, ancient humans fighting to live. We evolved to trust our instincts, Park said, to see danger and act immediately, to protect the weak, especially children, without stopping to think. These things are not choices for us. They are written into our biology. They saved our species when we were weak and small. That was then, one of the judges said. Her name was Counselor Mira, and she was a being of pure energy. You are no longer primitive creatures fighting for survival. You have technology. You have law. You should have evolved past these instincts, should we? Park asked quietly. Or have we kept something that your species lost? I would like to call my first witness. Dr. Yuna Kim, xenopsychologist, a woman in her 40s, entered the witness sphere. Dr. Kim had studied alien minds for 20 years. She had written 3 books on comparative psychology across species. If anyone could explain humans to the Federation, it was her. Dr. Kim, Park said, please explain to the tribunal how human empathy works compared to other species. Kim nodded. I have studied the brain patterns of 47 different species. Humans have empathy levels that are 3 times higher than the galactic average. When we see another being in pain, our brains react as if we are in pain too. We cannot help it. She brought up brain scans showing the difference. More than that, Kim continued. Humans have something very unusual. When we see a child from any species, not just our own, our protective instincts activate. Show a human a baby, and their brain releases the same chemicals as when they see their own baby. We are biologically programmed to protect all children, everywhere. That sounds like a weakness, Commander Thexra said. Perhaps, Kim agreed. Or perhaps it is a strength. Humans will risk their lives for strangers. We will sacrifice ourselves for people we have never met. We see injustice and we cannot look away. Call it weakness if you want. But it is also what makes us human. She paused, looking at each judge in turn. When Captain Huang saw those children in cages, his brain did not give him a choice about how to feel. Every instinct he had was screaming at him to save them. To a human, waiting weeks for authorization while children suffer is not patience. It is cruelty. The chamber was quiet. Some of the aliens looked troubled. They were beginning to understand that humans were not just choosing to be violent. They were built differently. I have another witness, Park said. Lieutenant Deho Choi. He was there with Captain Huang on Talus 4. A young man entered the sphere. Deho was 28 years old, but he looked older. The mission had aged him. He stood at attention, his military training showing. Lieutenant Choi, Park said gently, please tell the tribunal what you saw that day. Deho's voice was steady at first. We entered the facility following Captain Huang. We found the cages in the first room. There were so many of them, people from dozens of species all trapped. He paused, swallowing hard. There was a child near the door, a Lumini child, maybe 5 years old. When we approached, she made this sound. Not words, just pure fear. She thought we were going to hurt her. She had been hurt so many times that she expected it from everyone. Deho's voice broke. Tears ran down his face. Captain Huang knelt down in front of her cage. His hands were shaking. I had never seen him like that. He is always so calm, so controlled. but his hands were shaking as he cut through the lock. And when the door opened, he just whispered, "You're safe now." "I promise you're safe." "What happened next?" Park asked softly. "We went deeper into the facility," Deho said. "We found the weapons factory. Children were working there making guns. They were so thin, so tired. And we found the computer records. 3 more facilities like this one. Plans to move everyone in 5 days." He looked up at the judges. The captain called Federation Command. He reported everything. They told him to evacuate and wait for the proper authorities. He asked how long that would take. They said weeks, maybe a month. He asked what would happen to the captives. They said they would be monitored. Deho's hands clenched into fists. Monitored. While they suffered. While they worked. While they lived in fear. For weeks. And then the traffickers would move them. And all that suffering would be for nothing because the evidence would be gone. "What did Captain Huang do?" Park asked. "He gave us a choice," Deho said. "He told us he was going to end it. Right then, that day, he said we could leave if we wanted. Report him. Save our careers. But he was going to save those children even if it cost him everything." "And you stayed?" "All of us stayed," Deho said. His voice was fierce now. "Because he was right. Your laws, your protocols, they were going to let those children suffer for weeks, maybe forever. What good is civilization if it cannot protect the innocent?" Commander Thexera stood up. "You admit you all knew it was wrong." "You all knew you were breaking the law. Yet you did it anyway. This proves my point. Humans think they are above the law." "No," Deho said quietly. "We knew we would be punished. We accepted that. But we also knew that following your law would make us monsters. So we chose to be criminals instead." The words hung in the air. The judges looked at each other. This was not normal. Criminals usually tried to escape punishment. They made excuses. They claimed innocence. But these humans were different. They admitted their guilt and said they would do it again. A voice came from the observation galleries. "May I speak?" Everyone turned. A Lumini scholar stood up. Her name was Niala, and she was known throughout the Federation for her studies of new member species. High Magistrate Velthorn looked surprised. "Scholar Niala, it is unusual for observers to request to speak during a trial." "I know," Niala said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "But this case is unusual, and I have information that may be relevant." "Speak then." Niala came down to the floor of the chamber. She looked at Taeyang with an expression humans would recognize as gratitude. "The child that Lieutenant Choi mentioned, the one who was so afraid, is my great niece. Her name is Sora. She is 7 years old. She was taken from her home 6 months ago and sold to those traffickers." The chamber erupted in noise. A judge's relative? This changed everything. "I know I am not neutral," Niala said. "I know my testimony may not count for much. But I must say this. Captain Huang saved my niece. He saved 17 Lumini children in total. He saved 183 beings from slavery and torture." She turned to face Commander Thexera. "You say he broke the law. You are correct. But I have studied Federation history for 60 years. Every major reform we have made, every expansion of rights, every improvement in justice came because someone pointed out that our laws were failing. Sometimes law and justice are not the same thing." "That is dangerous thinking," Velthorn said, but his voice was thoughtful, not angry. "Perhaps," Niala agreed, "but my niece is alive because someone had the courage to choose justice over law. If that is dangerous, then I am grateful for the danger." She bowed and returned to her seat. Ambassador Park stood once more. "High Magistrate, I have presented evidence of how humans think and feel. I have shown you that Captain Huang's actions came from instincts that protected his species for millions of years. I have demonstrated that he faced an impossible choice between law and morality. I ask you to consider all of this before you pass judgment." Velthorn was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "This tribunal will recess until tomorrow. We must consider what we have heard today. But I warn you, Ambassador, understanding why someone broke the law does not mean they escape punishment. The law exists for a reason. Without it, there is only chaos." As Taeyang was led back to his cell, he caught Ambassador Park's eye. She gave him a small nod. She had done her best. Now it was up to the judges. That night, Taeyang lay awake thinking about what had been said. They understood humans better now. But would understanding be enough? Or would the Federation decide that a species who could not follow rules was too dangerous to keep? He did not know, but he knew one thing for certain. If given the same choice again, he would make the same decision. Some things were worth more than safety. On the third day, the chamber felt different. The air was heavy with expectation. Everyone knew that today would bring something important. The judges had spent all night discussing the case. Now they would hear from the accused himself. High Magistrate Velthorn called the session to order. His ancient face was unreadable, but his eyes seemed troubled. In 600 years of service, he had never encountered a case quite like this. "Captain Huang," the magistrate said, "you have heard the evidence against you. You have heard your defense. Now we offer you the chance to speak on your own behalf. What do you wish to say?" Taeyang stood in the blue sphere. For 2 days he had remained silent, letting others speak for him, but now it was his turn. He took a deep breath and began. "I do not wish to defend my actions," he said quietly. "I broke your laws. I knew I was breaking them when I gave the order. I accept responsibility for what I did." The chamber was silent. This was not what they expected. "But I want to tell you about something that happened 10 years ago," Taeyang continued. "Something that changed who I am. I want you to understand why I made the choice I made on Talos IV." He paused, gathering his courage. Even after all these years, it was hard to talk about Europa. 10 years ago, I commanded a garrison on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. There was a war happening. Small colonies were fighting for independence. My job was to protect a civilian settlement from attacks. The walls of the chamber changed, showing images of Europa, a frozen moon with bases built under the ice. Taeyang's garrison protecting a small town of miners and their families. "We received intelligence that an attack was coming," Taeyang said. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled. "The rebels were planning to strike the settlement. We had defensive positions ready. We could have stopped them easily, but our protocol required confirmation before we could deploy. We needed 2 independent sources verifying the threat. We had only one source. So we waited." The images showed Taeyang in his command center, watching screens, waiting for confirmation that would allow him to act. "The confirmation came," Taeyang said. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. 12 minutes later. 12 minutes, he stopped speaking. The memory was too painful, but he forced himself to continue. By the time we reached the settlement, it was over. The rebels had come and gone. They destroyed the school first. It was morning. The children were just starting their lessons. The images showed the aftermath. A destroyed building, emergency responders searching through rubble, and the small bodies being carried out one by one. Many of the aliens in the chamber looked away. Even species without human emotions found the images disturbing. 37 children died that day, Taeyang said, along with their teacher, Miss Sarah Chen. She was 26 years old. She died trying to shield her students with her own body. Tears ran down Taeyang's face, but he did not wipe them away. "I followed protocol," he said. "I did everything right. I waited for confirmation like I was supposed to. And 37 children died while I waited. They died because I followed the rules." He looked directly at High Magistrate Velthorn. "I still remember all their names," Taeyang said. "Emma Rodriguez, 12 years old. Wanted to be a pilot. James Kim, 8 years old. Loved dinosaurs. Maria Santos, 10 years old. She played violin. I remember all 37 names. Every single one." His voice grew stronger. "I visit their memorial every year. I stand in front of their names carved in stone, and I make the same promise. I promise that I will never again let protocol stop me from saving innocent lives. Never again will I follow rules while children die." The chamber was absolutely silent. Even Commander Thexra had stopped his objections. "When I saw those children on Talos IV," Taeyang continued, "I saw Europa. I saw those cages, and I heard Federation Command telling me to wait for authorization. Wait for weeks while proper channels were followed. And I knew what would happen if I waited. I would be standing at another memorial, reading more names, making the same promise again. So I made a choice," he said. "I could follow your law and watch those children suffer. Or I could break your law and save them. I chose to save them. I knew it would cost me everything. My freedom, my life, maybe Earth's place in the Federation. But when I looked at those children, the price did not matter." He stood straighter, meeting the eyes of each judge. "I do not ask for mercy," Taeyang said. "I do not ask for forgiveness. I only ask that you understand. Some choices transcend law. Some moments demand action, not procedure. I made my choice. I accept the consequences, but I would make the same choice again every time. He bowed his head. I am ready for your judgment. No one spoke. The weight of his words hung in the air like a physical thing. Finally, Ambassador Park stood. Her face was wet with tears, but her voice was firm. High Magistrate, I have one more piece of evidence to present. Evidence that the Federation must see before making judgment. Velthorn nodded slowly. Proceed. Park activated her hologram display. Documents appeared floating in the air. Official Federation reports, intelligence files, communications between departments. These are classified Federation documents, Park said. They have been declassified for this trial. They show that Federation intelligence knew about the trafficking network on Talos 4 for 6 months before Captain Huang discovered it. A wave of shocked sounds moved through the chamber. 6 months, Park repeated. The proper authorities were building a case, following procedure, getting approvals from every necessary department, crossing every legal requirement, and during those 6 months, over 400 beings disappeared into that network. She highlighted specific sections of the reports. This report from 4 months ago warns that the traffickers are planning to expand their operation. This one from 3 months ago notes that captives are being used for forced labor. This one from 2 months ago requests emergency authorization to intervene. That request was denied because proper channels had not been completed. Park turned to face the 9 judges. Your system knew. It had evidence. It had the power to act, but it chose to follow procedure instead. 400 beings suffered while your bureaucracy processed paperwork. That is how civilization works, Commander Thexra said, but his voice was less certain now. We cannot act on impulse. We must have proper authorization. At what cost? Park asked. Captain Huang is on trial for breaking your laws to save 183 lives. But what about the 400 who suffered while your laws were being followed? Who is responsible for them? She walked closer to the judge's platform. Here is my question for this tribunal, Park said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire chamber. If Captain Huang deserves dissolution for acting without authority, what punishment do those who had authority but failed to act deserve? The silence was deafening. Which is the greater crime? Park asked. Breaking the law to save lives? Or following the law while lives are lost? Because if following procedure while innocents suffer is acceptable, then your civilization is not as advanced as you believe. You go too far, Ambassador, Velthorn said, but his voice was thoughtful, not angry. Do I? Park asked. Or have I finally said what everyone in this chamber is thinking? Your laws failed. Your procedures failed. Your entire system failed to protect the innocent. Captain Huang succeeded where your Federation failed. And now you want to punish him for it. She returned to her table and sat down. The defense rests, she said quietly. High Magistrate Velthorn looked at his fellow judges. They looked back at him. None of them seemed certain anymore. This tribunal faces a question it has never faced before, Velthorn said slowly, a question with no easy answer. We must decide if law is more important than justice, if civilization means following rules even when those rules fail morality, if order matters more than protecting the innocent. He stood and the other judges stood with him. We will deliberate. This case is too important to rush. We must consider every aspect, every implication. The tribunal is adjourned until we reach a verdict. As the judges left, the chamber erupted in conversation. Aliens arguing in hundreds of languages. Some angry, some thoughtful, all uncertain. Taeyang was led back to his cell. Ambassador Park walked beside him for a moment before the guards separated them. You did well, she said softly. It will not be enough, Taeyang replied. They will find me guilty. The law is clear. Maybe, Park said, but at least they will understand why. At least they will question their certainty. Sometimes that is all we can ask for. That night, across the Federation, billions watched recordings of the trial. For the first time, many began to ask questions they had never considered. What if their laws were wrong? What if civilization had become so focused on order that it forgot about justice? What if the humans, violent and unpredictable as they were, understood something important that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten? In his cell, Taeyang dreamed of Europa. But for the first time in 10 years, the dream was different. The children were still there, still dead. But now they were not alone. Standing with them were the children from Talos 4, alive and free. And when he woke, he did not feel the crushing weight of failure. He felt something. The judges deliberated for 7 days. 7 days during which the entire galaxy held its breath. The trial had become more than just one case. It had become a mirror forcing the Federation to examine itself. High Magistrate Velthorn sat in his private chambers, surrounded by 6 centuries of legal texts. He had devoted his entire long life to the law. He believed in it completely. Law was what separated civilization from chaos. Law was what made the Federation possible. But now, for the first time, he questioned. He read the human philosophical texts that Earth had submitted with their Federation application. Documents he had barely glanced at 5 years ago. Now he studied them carefully. Names he had never heard before. Gandhi, King, Mandela. Humans who had broken laws they believed were unjust and changed their entire civilization because of it. His people, the Vryn, had no such tradition. When their laws failed, they reformed those laws through proper channels. It took time, sometimes centuries, but eventually justice prevailed through order. They had eliminated the need for individuals to rebel against the system, or had they eliminated the ability to recognize when the system was wrong? Velthorn closed the books and looked out his window at Federation Prime below. A perfect city. Clean, orderly, peaceful. No crime, no violence, no chaos. Everything running according to procedure. And somewhere, while that perfect system processed paperwork, children were suffering. The thought disturbed him deeply. Meanwhile, throughout the Federation, the debate raged. News channels broadcast endless discussions. Some species demanded the harshest punishment for Taiyang. He was dangerous. If the Federation did not make an example of him, others would think they could ignore the law whenever they disagreed with it. Chaos would follow, but other voices spoke up. Victims of trafficking came forward with their stories. Tales of suffering that lasted for months or years while Federation authorities followed proper procedures. Cases that were still unsolved because the criminals moved faster than the bureaucracy. Military officers from dozens of species quietly admitted they had faced similar choices. Moments when protocol demanded they wait while people died. Most had followed protocol. Now they watched the trial and wondered if they had made the right choice. In a private meeting room far from the tribunal chamber, something unexpected happened. Commander Thexra sat across from Scholar Niala. She had requested this meeting, and though he did not want to come, he could not refuse her. "Why did you ask to see me?" Thexra asked. His voice was gruff but not unkind. Niala activated a hologram. A young Lumine child appeared, glowing softly with the natural light of her species. She was playing with toys in what looked like a recovery center. "This is Sora," Niala said softly. "My great niece, the child I mentioned during the trial." Thexra watched the child play. She looked happy, healthy. Nothing like the terrified creature in the cage from the mission recordings. "She has nightmares," Niala continued. "She wakes up screaming, thinking she is back in that cage. The therapists say it will take years for her to heal completely, but she is alive. She is safe. She has a future." "I am glad for her," Thexra said, and he meant it. "I know you lost family to human violence," Niala said, "during the first contact incidents. I know you have carried that pain for years." Thexra's scales darkened, a sign of distress in his species. "They attacked without warning, without provocation. They killed my bondmate and our 3 hatchlings. I was at the peace negotiations. I came home to find them dead." "I am sorry," Niala said. "Truly, no one should suffer that loss." "Then why am I here?" Thexra asked. "Why show me your niece?" "Because I want you to understand something," Niala said. "The humans who killed your family were wrong. They were violent and cruel. They deserved punishment. But Captain Huang is not those humans. He used violence to protect, not to destroy. To save, not to kill for pleasure." "Violence is violence," Thexra said. "Is it?" Niala asked. "A surgeon cuts flesh. A murderer cuts flesh. Is that the same violence? Or does intention matter? Does purpose matter?" Thexra was silent. He watched the child in the hologram. She was laughing now, playing with a toy. "I wanted Huang to pay," Thexra admitted quietly. "Not just for what he did, for what all humans did. I wanted revenge disguised as justice. And now?" Niala asked. "Now I do not know," Thexra said. He closed his eyes. "He broke the law. That is clear. But he also saved Sora. Both things are true. How do we weigh one against the other?" "I do not know either," Niala said. But I know that if we punish those who save lives because they broke rules, we are telling everyone that rules matter more than lives. Is that the message we want to send? After she left, Thexra sat alone for a long time. His hatred for humans had defined him for years. It gave him purpose. But looking at that child's face, he realized something. Revenge and justice were not the same thing. He had been pursuing the first while claiming to seek the second. The realization did not change the law. Huang was still guilty, but it changed how Thexra felt about the punishment. Perhaps there was a difference between legal guilt and moral failure. Perhaps both could exist at once. On the 5th day of deliberations, Ambassador Park received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Yuna Kim came to her office looking worried. "I have been analyzing the Federation's response to the trial," Kim said, "looking at public opinion across different species. We may have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Park asked. "The tribunal is divided," Kim said, "not just on the verdict but on what it means. Some judges see Taiyang as a criminal who must be punished to preserve order. Others see him as someone who exposed a flaw in the system. But they all agree on one thing. He broke the law." "We knew that from the beginning," Park said. "Yes, but here is what worries me. The Federation has never faced this situation before. A case where someone is clearly guilty but also clearly acted for good reasons. Their legal system is not designed to handle moral complexity. It is designed for clarity. Right or wrong, legal or illegal," Kim sat down heavily. "They will find him guilty," she said. "They have to. The law is clear. But I do not know what they will do about the sentence. And that uncertainty might be worse than any verdict." "Why?" Park asked. "Because if they show mercy, they undermine their own laws. Every criminal will claim they had good reasons. But if they show no mercy, they prove that the Federation values order more than justice. Either way, something fundamental changes," Park understood. The trial had forced the Federation into a position where there was no safe answer. Whatever they decided would have consequences far beyond this one case. On the 7th day, the judges reached their decision. Word spread quickly through Federation Prime. The verdict would be announced the next morning. That night, Taiyang could not sleep. He lay on his bed thinking about everything that had happened. The trial, the testimonies, the way aliens who had never questioned their system were now asking difficult questions. Even if he was found guilty, even if he was executed, maybe it was worth it. Maybe forcing the Federation to confront this question was more important than one life. The children he saved would grow up. They would tell their stories, and maybe, slowly, things would change. He thought about his team. Lieutenant Daeho Choi and the others who had followed him that day. They faced charges too, lesser ones but still serious. He hoped the tribunal would be lenient with them. They had just been following orders. His orders. He thought about Ambassador Park, who had fought so hard for him. Dr. Kim, who had explained humans to aliens who could barely understand them. Scholar Nyala, who had risked her reputation to speak on his behalf, and he thought about Europa. Always Europa. The children he failed to save. He would carry them forever. But now at least they had company. 183 lives he did save. 183 beings who would live because he chose to act. That was enough. Whatever happened tomorrow, it was enough. In his chambers, High Magistrate Velthorn prepared his statement. He had written and rewritten it dozens of times. Every word had to be perfect. This verdict would shape Federation law for centuries. It would define how justice and legality interacted. It would change everything. He was old, even by Vryn standards. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had judged thousands of cases. But this one was different. This one mattered in a way nothing else had. The humans had done something remarkable. They had forced the Federation to ask itself uncomfortable questions. Questions that had no easy answers. Questions that perhaps should have been asked centuries ago. Was civilization about order, or was it about protecting the innocent? Could it be both? And if the two came into conflict, which mattered more? Velthorn looked at his final statement. It was ready. Tomorrow the galaxy would learn whether law or justice prevailed, or perhaps, if they were very lucky, whether both could survive. The tribunal chamber was more crowded than it had ever been. Every seat was filled. Representatives from 400 species waited to hear the verdict that would shape the Federation's future. The crystal walls seemed to pulse with tension. Captain Taiyang Huang stood in the blue sphere, his uniform perfect, his face calm. He had made his peace with whatever was coming. Beside him, though separated by protocol, Ambassador Mireille Park stood ready. She had fought with everything she had. Now there was nothing left but to wait. The 9 judges entered. High Magistrate Velthorn moved slowly, carrying the weight of 6 centuries and this impossible decision. The other judges followed, their faces showing the strain of 7 days of debate. The chamber fell silent. Velthorn stood at the center of the judges' platform. His glowing eyes swept across the chamber, seeing the thousands of beings waiting for his words. When he spoke, his voice was clear and strong, but there was something new in it, something that had not been there before. Doubt. This tribunal has reached its verdict, Velthorn began. In the case of the Federation versus Captain Taeyang Huang of Earth, on all charges presented, we find the accused guilty. The words hit like a physical blow. The human delegation gasped. Ambassador Park closed her eyes. Lieutenant Daeho Choi, watching from the gallery, put his face in his hands. Guilty on all charges, the worst possible outcome. But Taeyang did not react. He had expected this. The law was clear. He had broken it. There was no other verdict possible. Velthorn raised a hand for silence as the chamber erupted in noise. However, he continued, and that single word made everyone freeze. The sentence requires explanation. This case has forced us to confront questions we have never faced before. Questions about the nature of law, justice, and civilization itself. He gestured, and images appeared on the crystal walls. The children from Talisfor are now free and safe. The trafficking network destroyed. The evidence that the Federation had known about it for months but failed to act. Captain Huang violated our protocols, Velthorn said. This is fact. He took lives without tribunal authority. This is fact. He acted against direct orders from Federation command. This is also fact. The law was broken. The verdict of guilty is appropriate. The magistrate paused. But the law was also inadequate, he continued. Our procedures failed to protect the innocent. Our systems valued order over action. Our civilization, in seeking to eliminate individual violence, created a structure that sometimes prevents necessary intervention. These are also facts. The chamber was absolutely silent now. No one had expected this. Captain Huang's actions exposed a fundamental weakness in our Federation, Velthorn said. Not in our laws themselves, but in how we apply them. We have become so afraid of chaos that we sometimes choose paralysis, so devoted to procedure that we forget the purpose of law is to protect, not just to regulate. He turned to face Taeyang directly. You are guilty of breaking our law, Velthorn said, but our law was guilty of failing morality. Both truths can exist together. The question is, what do we do about it? The magistrate took a deep breath. Therefore, this tribunal sentences Captain Taeyang Huang to immediate assignment as the first special humanitarian interventionist of the Galactic Federation, a position created by this verdict, a role with authority to act in situations where existing protocols create moral failures. The chamber exploded, aliens shouting in hundreds of languages, some in anger, some in shock, many in confusion. This was unprecedented. The accused was guilty but being given authority instead of punishment. Ambassador Park stared in disbelief. Lieutenant Choi was crying. Even Taeyang looked shocked, his calm facade finally breaking. Velthorn waited for the noise to die down. This is not mercy, he said firmly. This is justice. Captain Huang violated the law because the law failed to serve its purpose. Rather than punish him for seeing what we were blind to, we will learn from it. The position comes with strict conditions. Images appeared showing the framework of the new role. Every action taken under this authority will be reviewed by tribunal afterward. Every decision will be scrutinized. The authority can be revoked at any time if abused, and Captain Huang must train others from multiple species in this role, ensuring it does not become just a human position. Velthorn looked at each of the other judges, then back at the chamber. The verdict stands, guilty, because the law was broken. The sentence stands, service, because the law was inadequate. Both must be true for justice to be served. We acknowledge the crime while recognizing that sometimes laws need to be broken to expose their failures. Commander Thexera stood up. Everyone expected him to object, to argue against this unprecedented verdict. Instead, he did something no one anticipated. High Magistrate, Thexera said, his voice steady. I request assignment as one of the oversight observers for this new position. Velthorn looked surprised. Commander, you have been the strongest voice calling for punishment. Why would you wish to oversee the one you sought to convict? Thexra was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, and his words were honest in a way that shocked everyone who knew him. Because I was wrong, Thexra said. Not about the law. Captain Huang did break it, but about my reasons for wanting punishment. I wanted revenge disguised as justice. I wanted him to pay for what other humans did to my family. That was not justice. That was anger. He turned to look at Taeyang. I want to learn how you see injustice so clearly that you are willing to sacrifice everything to stop it. My species evolved away from violence. We thought we evolved towards something better. But maybe we lost something important. Maybe we lost the ability to recognize when our peaceful systems failed to protect the weak. Velthorn nodded slowly. Your request is granted, Commander. You will serve as primary oversight for the Special Humanitarian Interventionist Program. The verdict sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For days, every news channel discussed it. Some species were outraged. This set a dangerous precedent. If people could break laws and claim moral justification, society would collapse into chaos. But others saw it differently. The verdict acknowledged that law and justice were not always the same thing. That civilization required both order and the flexibility to recognize when order failed morality. That sometimes the greatest service to law was breaking it to expose its flaws. The trafficking networks faced unprecedented crackdown. The publicity from the trial brought attention to operations the Federation had ignored for years. Thousands of captives were freed. The bureaucratic processes were reformed to allow faster response to humanitarian crises. 3 weeks after the verdict, Taeyang visited the rehabilitation center where the freed captives were recovering. Ambassador Park went with him. They walked through halls filled with beings from dozens of species, all healing from their trauma. A small figure approached them. Sora, the Lumini child who had been in the first cage Taeyang opened. She was healthier now, her natural glow stronger, but her eyes still carried shadows of what she had endured. Through a translator, she asked him a question. Are you afraid of your new job? Taeyang knelt down to her level. He thought about lying, about being brave for her, but he chose honesty instead. Yes, he said, I am very afraid. Every decision I make will be questioned. Every action will be judged. I will make mistakes. People will criticize me. Some will hate me. Then why do it? She asked. Taeyang looked at her eyes that were learning to trust again, at her smile that was coming back slowly, at the future she now had because someone chose to act. Because you are worth being afraid, he said simply. Sora hugged him, not just with arms, but with light. The Lumine way of showing affection, wrapping someone in gentle warmth. Taeyang felt tears on his face as he hugged her back. Ambassador Park watched from a distance. She thought about what humans had brought to the Federation. Not advanced technology or military might. Not even their strange empathy and protective instincts. They brought the willingness to carry impossible burdens so others did not have to. The courage to be wrong if it meant doing right. The strength to sacrifice everything for people they would never meet. High Magistrate Velthorn watched the scene through his monitor. After 6 centuries of certainty, he had learned to embrace doubt. The humans were dangerous, unpredictable, impossible to fully control, but they were also necessary. They saw things the rest of the galaxy was blind to. They felt injustice in a way that transcended species barriers. They refused to accept that order was more important than protecting the innocent. The Federation had been changed forever. Not by force or conquest, but by one soldier who stood before the highest court in the galaxy and admitted his guilt while refusing to apologize for his actions, who showed them that sometimes the greatest service to civilization was breaking its rules. When the human soldier stood before the alien court, no one expected the verdict. They expected punishment or freedom. What they received was transformation. The acknowledgement that law and justice could diverge. That civilization meant knowing when to follow rules and when to break them. That sometimes the most dangerous people were the ones willing to sacrifice everything for what was right. And in that transformation, the galaxy learned what it meant to be truly human. Not perfect, not always right, but willing to bear the weight of